right. Today we're hosting Efe Kabba, who is a storyteller who works primarily in the mediums of film and video and photography. She's currently based in Canarsie Lenape territory, Brooklyn, New York, and identifies as a global citizen. Efe's passion for humans, community, and connection has led her to host and facilitate large-scale meditation gatherings in the past and presently, and now conscious dating experiences with humhum. She dreams of a world where everyone has the tools to connect to deep intuition and feel empowered to create their own realities. I'm super excited to welcome Efe. And while we wait for Efe, today we're kicking off a new series that is all about new dating narratives. And so Efe is going to share about her personal journey with dating. And here she is now. Hello. Welcome. It's so
Hi.
good to have you on.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
I can hear
having
you.
me.
Can
Can
you
you
hear
hear
me
me, by the
okay?
way?
Amazing. Efe and I
Yeah,
are
I
now,
can.
we're like 12 hours apart, right? Time zone wise.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
you are. Okay.
oh no, I'm in
Okay.
New
So
York
we're six
now.
hours
So
apart.
six, yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome back to New York. I did a brief introduction, just sharing a little bit about you and your art, as well as the fact that you facilitate with Hum Hum and you've been with us for quite a while now. And we're so grateful to have you. And I think one of the things that I so appreciate about you is your connection to your personal practice and like your spiritual practice, and you just always show up so like rooted and aligned with your, yeah, just with how you are in the world. And so it's such a gift to get to work with you and collaborate with you. I wanted to see if there's anything else you wanted to add or share before we just jump into this fun exploration about dating.
Yeah, nothing else. Just that like I'm excited to kind of, yeah, share, I guess, the things that have been bubbling up within me and that I've, I guess, shared with you personally. So hopefully some
So,
of it can be
yeah,
helpful.
and just to set the frame for this conversation, there's a lot of mainstream content around dating that really centers like the outcome and the longing and wanting something that's like out of our control. And I feel like we need more stories that are just about the journey and the process and what's happening to us on the inside, and being able to actually work with our agency. And I just feel like you're the perfect person to kick this series off with. And so I remember you telling me like early on when you were starting to work with Hum Hum as a facilitator, how it shifted and kind of impacted the way that you were going about dating. So I'm curious if you could share a little bit more about that first.
Yeah, I think like two of the things, I think just like being a facilitator, like there's so much presence that is required. And I think, yeah, no, the ethos of Hum Hum truly about connection or dating, really being like this um, practice of exchange, practice of energy exchange, where it's like we're not putting so much emphasis on the end goal of like I must find like my one or whatever. And I feel like for me it was like a practice what you preach kind of thing, where yeah, I think I started to look at dating through that lens, like rather than like, oh my God, I think it's like rather than having such a tight grip on it, kind of just being like, if I set the intention and I am in alignment with that, with like what I want, like I think I will, what I desire will naturally kind of, I will naturally attract it. And so, yeah, and also just like, I think intention setting, I think there's some times where during hum events, we would like ask folks to kind of share what their intention for showing up that day. And I think for me, yeah, intention setting as a spiritual practice is extremely powerful, like on a larger scale and smaller scale. So for me, so for context, before I was a facilitator, I actually did do some hum events and I really loved it. And that actually, I feel like really was what kind of ignited the shift for me and how I was approaching dating. And then I think when that shift happened and I became a facilitator, it only became stronger. And so for me, like I'll just use an example of there was a time where I was not on the apps, like the traditional apps, which is why Hum was such a almost like a godsend for me, like at that time. But there was a time where I was like, oh, I have all these tools now. Like maybe I can shift back to also incorporating the apps. But this time I wanted to do it differently. So I think for me, like really being clear about why I was using the app was really important. So like having that intention, like the broader intention, but then I would, instead of just like taking out my phone and just like mindlessly swiping, each time I like, before I opened the app, I would set an intention for like how I wanted to show up and like what I wanted. So like immediately there was that presence. It was like, okay, I'm here doing this. This is what I want to do. It's not just something that I'm doing to pass the time. And so I feel like already just like being very specific in that energy was really helpful. And I also, yeah, set the intention to see the people that I was swiping truly as people. You know, I think it can be easy to just think of it as a catalog and kind of, but for me, how I did that, I was like, I'm not just going to swipe on someone. If like I'm interested in them, I'm actually going to like take my time to like tune into their energy and like actually send a message. So that was like a boundary that I had set around, if I'm going to be on this app, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to make it fun. So I'm going to just like try and say something witty that entertains me too. And also with that, because obviously like during hum experiences, kind of being grounded with like the breath and doing like somatic practices is like really important to kind of tuning into ourselves where we are in each moment, but then also having the capacity to more authentically connect and relate to other people. And so I would always do that too. Like it was never like a thing where I'm on the subway, I'm going to get on the app. It was really, all right, let me take a few minutes to just like breathe, to ground, to center before I would enter into, yeah, I guess into the activity of like swiping. And I think in the hum container, it's embedded into it, you know? So I feel like it just makes it so much easier to, yeah, really like be aware of the body and like what's happening in each moment and the heart. And I think for me, I really took it seriously not to be so, not to focus too much on the outcome, but on just really being like, oh, I want to connect with cool human beings. So that was like a huge shift for me, like where I hated like the apps, like hated them so much. But of course, if you're bringing that energy into something, like you're not going to have a good experience. But as soon as that shifted, like it became just so much more enjoyable. And then I actually like met my now partner through that, like in a matter of like, I don't know, like a few weeks of practicing
it's so
that way.
powerful that like a few shifts in the energy that you're showing up with and intentionality and like really being devoted to the boundaries that you set for yourself and like consistently practicing, okay, I'm not just going to do this in like a mindless, haphazard way. I'm going to really show up. And I'm curious, and it sounds like that the process itself became more connected, which, yeah, we talk about it's like more connected to self, more
Mm-hmm.
connected to other people, like more in integrity with ourselves. And I'm curious, like, as you were doing that, if you like learned anything that, about yourself in the process during that time.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it was learning that came from challenge, I guess. Like, of course, I'm talking about like how it became like a little more easeful and enjoyable, but I think like it's still to be able to go from like one paradigm of thinking where it's like you're kind of mindlessly trying to connect or date, and there's like so much emphasis on the end goal, to this kind of new paradigm. There's definitely like growing pains that happen, and so I think going through that, there are definitely times where like if if things didn't go how my mind wanted them to, there was definitely like still resistance and kind of like old, I guess, like wounding that showed up. And like I think that was definitely a challenge, but I feel like the more I practiced, I think, um, yeah, and the more awareness that was brought to like some of the things, the stories, the like maybe the old stories that I was telling about myself about, um, worthiness around love and all of these different things. Yeah, I think like over time, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, and I haven't like really expressed it in this way, but I think it had like dating and relating actually like has been really integral to like my self-love journey. And I think sometimes that's maybe not the narrative that is highlighted or spoken about. Of like, I feel like when you imagine like, oh, a self-love journey, you're like, it seems like there's this like it's very individuated and you're like working so hard on yourself. But actually, for me, I think partially kind of experiencing maybe things not going exactly what my mind wanted to, and then still having to come back to that. No, I'm actually still worthy, and like that in itself was like incredibly healing. So I think like maybe that's not like a lesson, but it is like I don't know, for me, like a huge thing. And I think it's that I feel like it's almost like a loop. It's like the more that I was kind of pushing myself out of my comfort zone, showing up in presence, showing up like regardless of how things maybe turned out, um, I think the easier it actually became to connect with people and attract the people with the qualities that I was
It's such
really
a
looking for.
profound insight and shift to kind of recognize the path of dating as a self-love practice, that a lot of the time people will be like, okay, I'm not ready to date because I have all this work to do on myself. And I think like, yeah, there's of course like a certain threshold of like,
Yeah.
we need to take care of ourselves and know if we feel ready to engage. And it's like never fully done. And that relational field can be like wildly alchemical if we're having that practice of like, okay, there's suffering arising. How do I tend to that within myself? Which it sounds like that's what you were doing. And you were like, okay, I'm seeing that I'm getting caught in these
Mm-hmm.
patterns and these pains. Like, what do I need to continue to step into my sense of self-worth? And I'd be curious if you can share just a little more about like what that actually looked like for you. Like, what did it look like to practice that?
Yeah. So I mean, a very clear example would be, and it's funny because it like was happening during kind of that time when I first got acquainted with humhum. And honestly, I feel like it's a spiral. Like it's still kind of happening. It still just happened recently, but not as like potent. But for me, one of my, I guess, triggers or wounding is like people ignoring me. So meaning like I'm talking to someone waiting for them to respond and I don't hear anything. It's that fear of like, oh my God, are they going to ghost me? Or like, I'm not important enough. I'm not worthy. So there is that fear. And so, okay, so for example, I'm like, talking to multiple people. We're trying to like plan, and this person hasn't responded for like, I feel like I would, in the past, like I would go into like a spiral of just like self-deprecation and like self-hate, honestly. But I think because I was like coming into this as a practice actually, and like with that awareness, like I would like the kind of momentary freak out would happen. And maybe like, I don't know, that this is now it's like 2 years almost. Yeah, like that, it would last like a few hours, maybe until the next day of just like, oh God, like what's wrong with me? Like that's usually the question that comes is like, what is wrong with me? Am I not enough? Am I not good enough? And then I would just be like, okay, all right, you're going to story, you actually have no clue. Like it would be me like being like having to like kind of like talk to myself, as like you don't know what's happening. Like so many things could be going on. And then honestly, eventually they would like text back and like maybe they were like super busy or something. But I think like that process of like having to go through it, and then actually, after kind of doing that self-talk, I would try and like self-soothe in some way, in like in a healthy way, and just kind of be like, no, you're okay, I'm worthy, like this is fine. And like eventually, like I said, they would like text back. But and yeah, and that is a process, like I mentioned, that literally kind of happened like last month, but I think the kind of switch, the shift happens a lot quicker, um, into, and I guess the kind of going into this like deep dark hole lasts a shorter of a period too. So I think it's just like for me, just knowing, just having awareness of like what my, like specifically in relationship and in dating, like what my specific maybe triggers are that come from past wounding. I think that's like really important for people to kind of, and you can only really discover what they are through the experience of dating and relationship, unfortunately. So yeah, for me now, I just know that there's like a few things, and like I can now even
Yeah.
communicate it to people, and that's what I feel like 2 years ago, I wasn't fully communicating it to like, people who I was more casually connecting with. But now I feel like I can be like, hey, you didn't text me back. This is what it brought up for me. Like, can you just be aware of that, like moving forward, And that's actually what I did recently. And it was like taken in very well,
Yeah,
So
there's so
yeah.
many things in here that are just like absolute gems. Like I think one is like the secure attachment that you've built with yourself so that you can teach other people how to be in relationship with you the way that like you want to deserve. And then the other piece of just like it almost doesn't matter what the other person does like after the spiral starts. It's like catching that spiral, and it's like the thing that's in your control is how you love yourself in those really hard moments, not like did they text me back? And obviously like maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but like yeah, just that whole process of
Yeah.
seeing like I just admire how you really are able to and have been practicing seeing the growth potential in the difficult experiences. And it's like more for you about seems like what is this kicking up in me and how can I meet that with like a lot of love and curiosity rather than like make it about the situation. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah, I mean, these are really hard things to put into practice. And so, as you were, I guess, like for other people who are wanting to kind of practice with this level of intentionality and awareness, um, how do you know, like, how would you be able to tell within yourself that, like, okay, something needs my attention now? Like, I need to turn in versus turn out. Like, how do you navigate that?
um that's a great question. I feel like typically it's I feel like if it's like if I'm having a really like maybe more, I don't want to use the word extreme, but like heightened like emotional and like somatic response that isn't necessarily, I guess, matched with like the actual situation, if that makes any sense. Like the amount I'm like activated versus what has actually happened, I think for me is like a really big clue for like, okay, I think this is maybe something about me versus like how the other person is relating to me. And of course, there are times where um, where it is more like relational, you know, where it's like, and even like honestly, in the sense that I'll go back to I think it can be both too, honestly. Like even I'll go back to the most recent experience with someone, that friends getting to know maybe in a more like non-platonic way, you know, and he actually did not text me back, you know, like that was like a didn't text me back. I had my own like emotional response. I took care of myself. But then at the end of the day, like it can also be like, okay, but that actually, I don't think that is the kindest way to be interacting with each other, you know, if we are going to have some kind of a friendship, relationship, etc. And then in person, I kind of brought it up, and that's when I shared. And then he was kind of like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That's a thing about me." Like it's like almost like that I'm not the first person who has said that this is a pattern for him too, you know? And so it's like twofold of like, yes, it's something that I need to look at within to like heal, continue to heal, but then it's also like there is this thing about how can we treat each other with more kindness too, you know? And just like for me being like, how do I want, yeah, how do I want to be treated? How do I want to treat other people too? So yeah, I'm not sure if I exactly answered the question. But for me, that's kind of what's coming up like in
Yeah,
the
I think you
present.
totally answered it. And, you know, I was thinking of it in terms of it's never, I guess it's not ever that neatly, like, it's not easy to disentangle. Like, we're in a relational field, right? And, like, as you're pointing to, it's almost like sometimes I find in my relationships, like, my perfect kryptonite is the other person's, like, opposite kryptonite. And so we just, like, reverse trigger each other. And it's like, what the hell is this? And so it's like, okay, I'll do my
Oh my
part and,
God,
like,
so true.
look at what's going on in me and then try to bring that forth and talk about that. And that's like, you know, what you were doing as well. And then it gives room for the other person to be like, oh yeah, I guess I do that. And like, maybe I want to change that because clearly people are impacted by it and it doesn't feel good for them. And like, and it's like, I think when we can take some of the like blame shame out of it and really see it as like, here's what I'm bringing, here's like how I am showing up and like what can I learn from this, then it really can be like an active repatterning and healing experience with people. But you know, of course, discernment with who you choose to kind of do that with. But there's so much. Yeah, do you want to say anything about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, definitely. No, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's almost what happens. Like once you kind of make the decision to look at like romantic connection, any kind of connection as like a spiritual practice, like it's almost like the universe brings you those people to be a direct mirror for you, you know? It's just like literally like, okay, well, this is where we're at. And so, yeah, that's why I mean, it's powerful because like as I mentioned, it's a self-love practice, but it's also like, yeah, I don't know, this like evolving together kind of situation, you know, when you are kind of relating with maybe someone with like a similar
Yeah, and that's
intention.
where, like, as you were talking about just the kindness, that's where that comes in. It's like we're in this together in this kind of relational soup of figuring things out and having that grace to just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's because it's hard work. It's really hard work. And I'm curious if you've experienced this, but I was reflecting recently on how, like, I'll, in different relationships, specifically romantic relationships, I'll be on like one side of a dynamic in one relationship, and then immediately in my next relationship be on the other side. And I'm like, oh my God, I understand them so much more now. But like that seems to happen a lot for me. So I'm curious, yeah, if that's ever come up for you.
uh, not so back to back is that. Like I'm trying to figure out how to, yeah, I guess my partner and I recently have been kind of exploring polyamory and like what that looks like. And I think, um, yeah, I think what I can say to that is like in that dynamic, like maybe one of us like having the experience of like connecting with someone else and like being like navigating what it's like to be like in a partnership and then have your partner be seen like connecting with someone else and there's that dynamic. And then when it switches where it's like, okay, now the other person is dating someone and now the other person is not, I feel like it's like, it's almost like it's like you mentioned, it's like an opportunity to be like, holy crap, okay, now I kind of understand like what they've been going through. I know it's not the exact same thing, but it's being able to, I don't know, I guess be pushed into a place to have more empathy, I guess, for the other person's experience too.
And as you're
Yeah.
considering, because you're talking about dating being like a spiritual practice, a self-love practice, a whole practice, and all these things, what would you say, like now or recently, if you're open to sharing, like are some of like what is it that you're practicing? Like what are you devoted to above all else? Like what's the devotion? What's the commitment for you?
Do you mean specifically as it has to do with like relationships?
I guess I mean it like if dating, or if you're seeing dating as like any other part of life, how would you capture like what it is, like the commitment that what's like the orienting point for you? Yeah.
Could you
Okay,
like
said in
rephrase
another
that?
way.
I want to make sure that I like understand.
What are you practicing with? Like, what is the practice ultimately? If, yeah.
Hmm. I feel like, I mean, ultimately, what's coming up right now is just really, I feel like I feel like it all boils down to just like acceptance. I don't know, like it starts with like self-acceptance or just like acceptance of what reality is. And I think it's being met with all of the different challenges of life. And I think for me, and this specifically is like my perspective, like really trying to see what the lessons are, like what it's trying to teach me. Maybe it's because, I don't know if for whoever knows human design, I'm a 1-3 profile, so I'm like just like a voracious learner. And so I feel like for me, truly like life, even though of course in the moment it sucks, like no one wants. Um, but it's for me, it's really, and I think acceptance means truly like being with things as they are and being when resistance does show up, even being with that resistance when it's there and like extending kindness to myself, but then also like being able to like release that also. And so for me, I feel like that applies to, being in a relationship and being in relationships and everything, honestly, in life. And I think for me, that's the overarching, I guess, practice because I mean, it's challenging. It's like constantly having to, you know, go through that spiral of like having to like learn the same lessons over and over and over and over again. But I think maybe in the past, like there was just so much like self-belittling, you know, or just like maybe even like victim mentality of just like, why is this happening to me? um, but it's like, I think number one, another aspect I think of just like acceptance, self-acceptance is just like self-responsibility, like taking responsibility for my role in like my own life. And I think that actually is empowering too. And to be like, okay, I'm an autonomous being. And of course, there are other forces at play and at work. But actually, just from, you know, experiencing these several decades of life, it's like, there's more suffering that happens, you know, when you're constantly like resisting. So I think for me, that is the great practice of like constantly just like being able to just accept.
What is, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you're in your current landscape of life as it's moving, what are some of the friction points or growth edges that you're bumping up against like now that are helping to shape your practice of um, accepting things as they are, not resisting?
Yeah. Whew. Like, do I want to go
Yeah.
down? I kind of want to bring it back to
Oh, that's
relationships.
what I meant. Yeah. In your
um,
relationships. Yeah.
oh, okay. Yeah. Growth edges, growth edges. Um, yeah, as I mentioned, I I am like exploring polyamory, which is like a whole different like landscape. But I feel like it's almost like to be successful, you have to almost like cultivate all of these kind of like skills and practices that we've kind of talked about that are cultivated in containers like humhum. Um, and I think for me, one of the growth edges is really like coming up against this conditioning around like ownership, like meaning like owning other people or other people, which I think like monogamy, like that is one of the values of monogamy, you know, is like this person is mine. And for me, it's been this like it, it's been kind of this like process of being like, is this conditioning or is this something like deeper, you know, within me of like, oh no, like I can't do this, you know, it's like too difficult. Um, and like I think it's honestly like an extension. Like I'm seeing this like being able to kind of hold multiple types of relationships that aren't just like strictly platonic, like and being able to kind of move through some of the, I guess, like nuance or just like blurriness, I guess, sometimes of, so it could mean like starting to bring like more romance into friendships, platonic friendships, or just being like kind of experimenting with what the gray areas of romantic relationships are too. And like number one, discovering that the not so like clear cut relationships are still nourishing to me and still kind of provide the things that I'm talking about of like another person being a mirror for me for my own like self-healing and growth. um so yeah, that's been a big growth edge, as well as like coming up against emotion, like really difficult like emotions like jealousy, or like I know emotion is like such a complex, or jealousy is such a complex emotion. But then it's again, it's like going back to the like acceptance, the self-acceptance of just being like, all right, I'm a human, these are things that are happening in my body, like I'm not defined by them, and they aren't bad, because I think that there is a little bit of, not even a little bit, there is a huge negative connotation like around jealousy, you know, and like jealousy is like directly linked to this idea about this person is mine. And of course, it's also linked to kind of more, I guess, evolutionary kind of like instinctual survival mechanisms too. And so I think it's been really helpful for me to like understand it in that way and just being like, okay, this is like my body trying to protect me, but actually there really is no danger of like losing someone, you know? And it's like, I think for me, it's actually been, yeah, really pushing me, really pushing like, yeah, these, my own healing and really pushing like my ability to, I think, hold, yeah, multiple like nuanced relationships. And then like at the same time, like really truly feeling like my heart expand too at the same time, um, which has been, yeah, really beautiful. But yeah, it has been a huge growth edge for sure. And it's almost like I have to, these skills and like practices that I've been talking about, like it's almost like being in relationship that are not just platonic with multiple people. Like it's almost like I have to really be devoted to, yeah,
That
to
makes
these
a
practices
lot of sense.
basically.
And I'm
Yeah.
curious, like for you entering onto this exploration and this path with polyamory, like um, did that come about like with some kind of moment of like clarity, or did it kind of happen in an organic way as you were practicing everything you've been talking about? Like what in your being was like, okay, this is what I need to now do to like continue to expand my own heart. Like talk a little bit about that, the origin of how this kind of moved in you.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the seed of the curiosity perhaps came before I was like intentionally like seeing like dating as as a spiritual practice. Um, but I think, yeah, I don't know. It was just like in the past, I had like been able to hold like romantic feelings for multiple people at the same time. And like there was always a part of me that was just curious, I think, to really like dive deeper into that and see what emerged. And I'll be honest, like this isn't like a polyamory life, but I was honestly so naive. Like when I first like wanted to dive or brought it, you know, my partner and I were talking about it. So naive. Like I don't think then I actually realized that it would be like how challenging it would be. And like it makes sense now because what we're talking about, if you have one partner and they are your mirror and kind of what we were talking about, like it's like the opposite kryptonite, you know? It's like, all right, just add another add another one. Like clearly it's going to be more challenging. Um, but as I mentioned, like I think like I truly, truly believe that like being in a relationship is like deeply healing experience. And I think I am just interested in seeing, like, I'm still in the very beginning stages of this exploration, but it's like any other, I think, like like healing, you know, where it's like, you know, it's not going to be easy right now, but it gets easier. And each time you kind of like revisit these lessons and challenges, it like the trauma or the stuck emotions, et cetera, like are less potent and you're able to kind of like come out the other side. And I kind of like, I'm trying to approach polyamory in a similar way of like, all right, it's like hard now. I'm going to get through like the challenges, but I do know that there's so many benefits too from being able to like move through it.
And I guess going into some of those like benefits that you've seen in your own heart, mind, body, like can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think maybe going back to the whole idea of, or like this new kind of perspective of not putting so much emphasis on the outcome of finding this one person, who is like our person, who is like can give us all we need and want and desire, and I think like the dominant like a narrative slash practice is trying to find this one person who can somehow give you everything you want, which I just don't think is realistic, and I think puts so much pressure on like that one person to give you everything you need. And I've already seen that it's like being able to just maybe have a little like give partners, the people I'm dating, like a little bit more grace, to be like, oh, okay, I want to like, even if maybe I'm not necessarily like getting, I don't want to, it's not transactional, but like a specific need of mine isn't being met by you. That does not mean that like there is still not like a benefit to having a relationship. And I feel like that just like takes pressure off a little bit too. And it's like, and I think also being able to kind of be in relationship with multiple people in this way, it's actually like you're the mirror, it's like different mirrors, like they bring up different parts of self to be looked at. And I think it's I don't know, I feel like it's not for the faint of heart, but if I think if you are devoted to kind of exploring what it looks like for like dating to be a spiritual practice, a healing practice, I do think it's like a almost like a fast track, um, yeah, healing container to do
Yeah, that
that.
makes a lot of
So,
sense. And it's almost like doing, you're like putting yourself in a pressurized container on purpose to kind of have some of that stuff get kicked up.
mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And it's also, I mean, yes, but it's also like, it's this ethos of not wanting to stifle desire, because I feel like desire is life force. And I think a lot of the times especially when kind of working within the paradigm of monogamy, I think we do have to suppress many of our desires. And I think that can have adverse effects, like whether it's in how we, treat the people that we're with, whether if it manifests as like illness or like all these other things like in our bodies. So for me, it's like I'm intentionally exploring this because this is like a thing. I don't know, my soul desires to explore this in this lifetime, but it's also like I see it as an opportunity to not have to stifle my desires as much, or to be able to like explore, to like see what desires emerge and to not feel like shame or guilt about them, and to allow, yeah, to kind of maybe like water the soil a bit to see what can emerge from that. And so like right now it's an experiment and we'll see. But for me, it's like a really big
and I
part of
wonder
it too.
too, because our desire and like sexual energy is so interwoven with our creative life force, and you're such a creative, like that is your life. I'm so curious how what the relationship has been between you feeding this fire and like walking this path and your creative world, your work.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Actually, it's been really, I think for me, it's been really key to like understand that like creative energy, sexual energy, like desire, like our life force are kind of like all one and the same. And so I've actually been very recently like practicing. So like, yeah, okay, relating with someone, and I don't even know. I don't know that much about tantra. Like it's my intention to become more of a student of tantra, but I kind of like allowing, like I said, like allowing that desire to flow, connecting with this other person, and like seeing what arises like in my body, and not necessarily like in a sexual way or anything, but just really about like sensuality and energy. And I have actually been, I've tried doing this practice a couple times in like the last few months, of like really the next day, for example, after like, you know, having this exchange, like this really potent exchange of like, whoo, it's very exciting. Like I'm like allowing my desires to kind of flow and like take form. And then the next day, like I'm feeling still like really activated and excited from it. But then I'm like, oh, actually, I'm going to channel this. So like this specifically, this last time, I like did a Kundalini practice to kind of like move like that energy. And then I like set the intention to kind of like channel that energy into the thing that I was writing. And it was like a really great writing session, actually. And so for me, oh yeah, they're definitely connected. And I'm such a like new student of this, but like being able to like tap into that, I feel like is really, I'm really excited about it, actually. And for me, like I guess like for those who know astrology, like actually like for me, relationships are actually really important for like understanding myself, and for yeah, they're just a really integral part of my life. Like it's always just like, so like I think understanding that, and then like understanding like, oh, like actually like this could like come back to my creative practice, and like I can use that for like my benefit, is really
Yeah, the
exciting.
word permission just keeps coming through, like just giving yourself so much permission to just like be and
Mm.
flow and work and create and follow your desires. And it's really it's enlivening to me to see your aliveness around this topic, like this kind of intersection between your relational practice and your creative practice and your own spiritual practice. Like they're all kind of one in the same in a way. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, they are actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really
So
are.
we're almost at our time, but I have one last question, which is basically if your heart were kind of on its journey, which it is, and you're on this winding trip, what is it that you see yourself moving towards? Like, what's the next stop that your soul wants to experience, as you so eloquently put? And then, like, what is it that you're leaving behind? Like, what's no longer in resonance or working for you or of interest?
Yeah, I think like the next step that like my heart is yearning for, like the next, you know, stop is really to, I think on this experiment of being able to like have these, I guess, ambiguous relationships or whatever, and to like follow my desire. Um, I think it's just really to like be open to what is out there, and to continue to be with like the like emotional challenges that come up, you know, and like not give up because of it. Because it can't, I'll be really honest, it can be, there have been times where I'm like, nope, nope, this is too hard, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. But I've already seen like in this short period of time, like I said, the potency just kind of like keeps decreasing. And so for me, yeah, I just I'm just so curious to see how like I continue to grow, while being able to like hold multiple relationships at once, and also kind of accept like partners partners, you know, and like that dynamic too, and possibly even, I don't know, like maybe even seeing like what the possibility is of like being friends, or have relating to like my metamor, as they call it, in polyamory. And that, I mean, that's of course just like a very lofty um, kind of destination for me right now, because I am still working through a lot of, I guess, like self-worth stuff that I think can maybe block me being able to just be at ease with that. But so that's where I want to go. What I want to leave behind. Yeah, what I want to leave behind, I think, is the story that something is wrong with me, or like that, or like, it's not even just in relating, but it's I mean, it's not just in romantic relating, it's in so much of just like my career relating and just like friendship relating. um I want to, because I also think that's like such an ego thing to like, if something happens, to constantly just like bring it back to myself and be like, oh my, like there has to be something wrong with me, like rather than being like, oh no, actually maybe it's something with the other person and they're going through something. And I feel like that story has held me back so much. And so I would really just love to like let go of that, to see what can really blossom like in my life and in my relationships.
Mm,
Yeah.
my heart feels so warm, like hearing both what you're leaving behind and where you're headed. And I just love you so much. I'm so excited for your path. And yeah, you're such an
Aw,
inspiration.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
for having me
It's so great to
on.
just be co-travelers. And I feel like
Yeah.
there's always so many overlapping synchronicities when I talk to you. So I'm excited to dig in more and like catch up. But this was such a
Hmm.
wonderful first episode of New Dating
Yeah.
Narratives. This is amazing. Such a gift. Is there anything else you wanna
Yeah.
go ahead?
Honored to be, oh no, I'm just saying honored to be the inaugural guest in this series. And yeah, looking forward to just like hearing other perspectives. Because I do feel like there is definitely like a paradigm shift happening, for for I think all of
Yeah,
our
that too.
benefit. So yeah, thank you for holding space for this and
Oh,
for your
thank
amazing
you,
questions.
Efe. Such a gift. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. And this is Efe Kabba, and we will be posting this on our channel. Thank you so much, Efe. Bye, everyone.